So let's talk about this one. This is ugly. This is a fraction. This is about as nasty as they're going to get. But it's not impossible. You have to be organized. Let's go through this step by step. Okay? And so you can follow along on the board as we're going through this. The images will be in the picture. But we're looking at, you have a problem we start off with, right? And so you've got the -2 and you've got this -2/3 out front, right? And so what we have to remember is that when we do something like this, I have to get the inequality isolated first. That's my first goal. So whatever we have to do in terms of adding the 2 to both sides or dividing by -2/3 or multiplying by -3/2, whichever, I've got to get those away from my absolute value first. That's number one priority, so that I can break it into its case 1 and case 2, and I can get the 2 different critical values. Okay? And so the first thing we do is we say, well, let's add 2 to both sides. So you have -44/9 plus 2. We're big kids. We know that 2 translates into what ninths? 18/9. So really what you're doing here is you're saying -44 plus 18/9. And that's how you get the 26/9. The next step would be to get rid of the -2/3. And so we're going to say, well, the way that we get rid of fractions is by multiplying by its reciprocal. So you're going to flip side. You're going to say -3/2 on both sides. That's why this one goes to +1 outside, so it's gone. Notice what happens to my inequality. Why did it flip? Multiply by negative. Yes, sir.
That's what I did.
What do you mean you distributed? Inside the...
Yeah,
I turned absolute values in on parentheses, kind of, I just distributed.
that's what I did.
Be careful. Be careful because you can run into sign problems with that. I think it works. I'm not going to say it's 100%. It's safer if you get rid of it first and leave the absolute value alone until you get it by itself. Because these aren't exactly like parentheses. So be cautious on that one. So once you get here, once we multiply by 2 or by 3/2, this changes to a positive. The fraction reduces to 13/3. Okay, and now since we have an absolute value less than a fraction, you're going to take the absolute values off. No change whatsoever. Just remove them. You're going to work that one out just like it looks. And you end up with x is greater than -7/5, which is correct. On the other side, you can do this approach in 2 ways. My way that I like to do is I like to simply put a negative in front and change the absolute value to parentheses so that when I divide by the negative sign, I remember to flip the inequality. If you go straight to it, make sure you flip the inequality and change the sign. Okay, because we're using the negative side of things. So at that point, you're same again as we did over here. You're simply going to solve for x. It turns out, if you're careful, you get 19/5. When you come over and you put it on a number line, you get this situation. 19/5 is just under 4, and -7/5 is just past -1. That's negatives over here. And so we would like to write it in another format as well. What would it look like to write this in? What would it look like in interval notation?
-7/5 and 19/5 in parentheses.
Comma, good, 19/5. And they're both in parentheses.
So if they were both pointing outward, like out in the number line, you would just do like negative infinities.
Let's write out, yeah, it'd be -infinity, comma, number, parentheses, both parentheses. Okay, and then it would be that the second number, comma, positive infinity. Always put your numbers in numerical order. So negative infinity can't ever occupy the right side of an interval. You can't have anything smaller than that. So putting it in the larger side doesn't make any sense. Positive infinity can never occupy the left side of an interval because it's the largest possible quantity or idea of a quantity. Does this make sense? Do you understand what we did? Or your mistakes? Go ahead.
How do you know to shade inside?
check a point is the quickest and most reliable way. Okay? Hold on, Blake. Well, if we wanted to check, what we can do is you can take any number inside this interval. So you have three groups. You have this side down here, you have in between your two critical points, and you have the values above the critical points. If 0 is an option, meaning if it's not one of your critical points, plug it in, because 0 is very nice and easy to work with. So you're going to plug 0, you're going to go back to your original equation, and you're going to plug 0 into x and just see what happens. Work it out, use your calculator, let it do the work for you. If it's true, you shade wherever 0 was. If it's false, because of the way absolute values work, they're like V's. Either it's going to be inside or outside. It's like a parabola. It can't ever happen where it's outside and inside at the same time. That's wrong. I can't think of any situation where that would happen. Okay, so pick a 0 or pick 1 or -1. Pick numbers that are easy to work with. Plug it in and see if it's true or false. True means shade wherever that number came from. False means don't shade there. If you're not sure if you have, like sometimes you may have 4 or 5 groups. Pick one each time and plug in from each group. Whichever one was true, that's where you're going to shade. If it's false, you don't. Make sense? It means the numbers within that region work for my problem. If it's false, it means they don't work. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, both of those, like
Yep.
where it says 2 minus 5 over 3x is less than 13 over 3.
Right.
How do they get to the next below?
Here?
Where it says, 7 over 3.
It's a choice. It's something you have to remember to do.
Subtract 2.
How do you go from the absolute value to no absolute value? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, like,
It's case 1 and case 2. You have to remember one case is simply removing the absolute value, like this one you see here. They just took the absolute value off. It's exactly the same. The other one, it's the other side. You have to remember to flip the inequality and change this to negative.
yeah, and then I'm guessing they subtracted 2, right, to get to the...
In this case, they're going to subtract 2. It gives you here. And then they multiplied by -3/5 on both sides. And that's what you end up with. And the same thing, they did exactly the same number of steps. It's just something different on the other side they work with. We good on that?
There's no fraction and decimal on button on these, are there?
Oh, yeah. Math frac. Math enter. Let me just give you a little bit of tips. I should probably have like a workshop for calculators, but
Yeah.
if you haven't updated your calculator, you need to. Let's try this one. Well, let's come back to this because we've already tried one. Let's do some other ones that I want to make sure that we get just a good review for. On this one, it's a word problem. It's involving slope and lines, since one of our main sections was about linear equations. This one says, Interstate 70 west of Denver, Colorado has a section posted as a 6% grade. What this means is that for every 100 feet you travel horizontally, you've just risen 6 feet, or declined 6 feet, depending if it's up or down. What's the slope of this section of highway? Well, let's draw a picture first. The picture would literally be a triangle on the highway. And so, if you're looking to draw this out, you're going to be going up, but what we know about that change is that you just traveled 100 feet across and you went up 6. What's the slope if that's my rise over run? 0.06 is your slope. And how do we get that number? Literally, rise over run. So 0.06 would be my slope, or you could have said 6/100ths is the slope. They told you that pretty much in the problem. I wanted to know if you could recognize what you're reading as what slope really is. Part B. On a highway, graded or with 6% grade, what's the horizontal distance required to go up 250 feet? How would you do that one?
I took 250 and then I divided it by 6. And then I just multiplied that by 100.
This is what it looks like. I've got 250 feet. I want to rise by 250. I know that the slope, so the slope of this line is going to be 0.06. And I want to know how far horizontally I have to travel. Can you give me the equation of the line? What's the quick and easy way to do this one?
Is the slope of 6 is the slope of 6 feet?
It's 6%.
So it changes, because above it, it says 100 feet. There's a 6-foot vertical change every 100
The
feet.
Now I'm writing the slope down as the slope is a 6% grade. It has a 6.06 slope. Okay? And so think about this as your origin. This is 0, 0. Think about this one as x, comma, 250. So let me just kind of write out the equation. It's going to be y equals what? 0.06 x. No, done. What's my y-intercept? 0. What's the slope of my line? 0.06. Well, I already know y. 250 is y, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to just plug this into a basic equation. 250 equals 0.06 x. So you were right. You divide 250 by 0.06 and it tells you how far you had to go before you got there. So 0.06, which you get x equals, it's a decimal. What was the answer?
4,166 2/3.
Yeah, we'll just leave it there. So you got to have to travel almost 4,200 feet before you get that high up. Okay, if you're traveling in a straight distance. Does that make sense? Okay. The last part, it says, a sign along the highway says 6% grade for the next 7 miles. Estimate how many feet of vertical change you would go through in order as you travel along these 7 miles. So what have I really done with this problem? How's it different from part B? Yeah, I just switched it around. Instead of asking you how high you went, I'm asking you how far did you travel horizontally. I know how high you went. You went 7 miles, right? And so, or how far you went. Now I want to know how high, after 7 miles of traveling horizontally, how high off the ground are you at this point? And so that's the same. I'm going to use the same exact equation, y equals 0.06 x, because this is a linear function. It doesn't change. It's the same thing. It's just headed like this. And I say, oh, I know x now. 7 times 5,280 would tell me how far I traveled horizontally. I plug that into x, and it tells me y. What'd you get? What is 7 times 5,280?
36,160.
So 0.06 times 36,000, what is it?
960.
Yeah. Which ends up being 2,000 some odd feet, right? Was it?
2,217.
Hold on, Haley. 2,200 and
17.6.
this number right here is just 7 times 5,280. Why did I want to do that? Why did I need to convert miles to feet?
Because it's asking you for the answer in feet.
Because I want it in feet. Because they also gave me the
Grade.
grade was also set up in feet, but it says how many feet of vertical change had happened. If I'd used miles in that case, then my answer would have been in miles. But I didn't want miles, I wanted feet. Any questions about understanding how you can write an equation if you assume the first point is at the origin? That means your slope, your y-intercept is 0. You wanted this to be as easy as possible. And it's just your slope times x equals y. Plug in what you're missing, or you need, what you have, and find what you're missing. Questions about that one? Okay. Graphing quadratics. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but this is like what we did earlier. Negative b over 2a. Except this one works out, it's factorable, it's nice. I can plug these into an equation, and we can work that out. Okay? And so we would say 3x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0. Anybody get a guess how you want to factor this one? Well, let's do 3 and x here. I've got to get a 6. Right? And so, is it factorable?
Yes.
Okay. If it is, then I'm going to have to put a 5 here and a 1 there.
No, it's not.
So 5 and 1, that's going to be 15 and 1. Nope. Let's try the other way. 5 and 1, that's going to be 3 and 5. That's going to give me 8. So it's not exactly factorable. So how would we find the solution to this one? Quadratic formula. Get the decimals out. On the x-axis, you put your dots. How do you find the vertex? Right here. So that's going to be 6 over 2 times 3. That's going to give me just 1. Plug that number back in to find my y. I've got my vertex. I have my other 2 points, and I just connect the dots. Is this graph going to be opening upwards or down? Up. Why? A is positive. Piece of cake. Be able to do that. Just that part of it. Graphing with quadratics. Find the vertex. X-intercepts and y-intercepts if you can find the y-intercept. How do you find the y-intercept of this equation right here? Plug in 0 for x. So, but guess what's always the y-intercept? It's right there. So it's going to go through the y-axis on -5. Because 0, when I plug in for x, that cancels the first 2 out, and you're going to get -5 equals y. Okay? Other questions about anything we've done today?
You use the quadratic formula to find the solutions?
The zeros. That's
That's
x-intercepts always. When you use quadratic formula, when you factor, completing the square root method, any of those things, they give you the x-intercepts. Okay? Other questions about anything we've looked at with this stuff? Okay, let's see. Remember on the test, quiz, when I ask you to solve a quadratic, I'm not going to specify how you do it. If you love the quadratic formula, even if it's factorable, do whatever you like. If it's easy factorable, then go for it. That's the way I would try first. If not, I'd do quadratic formula. I wouldn't waste my time the other ways because quadratic formula guaranteed to work no matter what your solutions are.
Would you just plug in the one that you get on the y formula vertex?
Yep. Whatever you get, like here, we'd take that 1, we'd plug it back in, and it would give us the y.
Wait, I thought you said it was -5.
That's the y-intercept. Y-coordinate of the vertex. That's what he was asking about.
What's the difference?
Okay? On the picture, if you have a parabola, right? So this is where your vertex is. That's going to be 1 comma whatever it is when we plug it in. This point, right, when you look at that is -5 right there. And then when you solve it, you get these 2 points up there. All right, so there's lots of points that you need: vertex, x-intercepts, and y-intercepts. If you get all those, you're good to go. Okay, last thing I want to remind you on is if you're not, I don't know if I told you this. I put out a tweet last night about some videos that I put up that are specific to what we talked about today. That would definitely help you. Graphing quadratics, inequalities, absolute value, things like that. Make sure you go back. Those videos are up. There's a lot of tutorials that you can check out. All of these are up. I'll post today's lesson since we recorded it. And you can go back and look at that. All these other things if you need them. One other thing is this particular example. I'll go ahead and work this out eventually, and I'll post this up as another option just to practice. So you can work this out, and I'll just include the solutions on this page, or I'll post them up somewhere else, and you can see it, and you can get this off the website and practice it and check your answers. Just for another rational with absolute value to practice on. Any questions? I'll be here this afternoon till 4 o'clock. If you need to come after to get any extra help. I'll be here in the morning. If you need to come in the morning at 7. If you have a question, shoot me an email this afternoon. I'm pretty quick to respond. But take some time and spend reviewing our problems that we've done in class and homework. The quiz is not going to be long. In fact, we're going to do something after the quiz to kind of just to keep going. And so take about half the period. I'm going to give you a time limit. And so make sure that you know what you're doing when you come in tomorrow for class.